Peyton Pritchard, 3 for 4 in the first quarter. I think he had 11 more in the second quarter. And didn't really let up from there. Just bombs away from Pritchard in this game where they needed him. They actually needed him to do that because Jason Tatum did not have a good night shooting. And Jaylen Brown was playing very well. But outside of that, offensively, this team was not playing their best game. Lillard and Giannis both had big nights for Milwaukee. They were extra motivated after losing that game to Brooklyn. They're off to a bad start. They're 1-3 to start the year. They had hopes of getting off to a better start than that, especially after they both got injured in the playoffs last year. Middleton's still not ready. Like there's some issues there with that Milwaukee team, and the biggest issue they had last night was Peyton Pritchard off the bench, who just could not miss. And you heard Dame Lillard talking about it right there. He said, "This is a guy we talked about. This is someone you have to game plan for." And just think about that. I mean,
you can't.
You have to game plan for Tatum. You have to game plan for Brown. You have to game plan for White and Holiday, and you also have to game plan for this little pipsqueak off the bench who any given night can hand you 30 points just bombing threes from the logo.
Yeah, to me, it's a little Belichickian. I'm going to game plan for Tatum and Brown, and I'm going to work my way down. Right. And guess what? If Pritchard beats me, tip of the old cap, touche, my friend, we move on. To the victor goes the sport. Like, you can't go against the Celtics with any mentality of taking Peyton Pritchard away. You just can't. And I love him, and that's why this team is so good.
Yep.
Because I'll continue to say at some point Porzingis will be back, and that pushes Pritchard down just a little bit more in the offensive hierarchy of this team. But he is a fun player that I love his cockiness. He's had that all along. Mm-hmm. He clearly, I don't know if he was born with that or he picked that up along sort of the basketball way. And I know the whole scouting report on him was he was a 4-year college player, right. So he played a lot of basketball and he was good and he kind of knew who he was coming into the league, wasn't raw, one-and-done.
You know how much you have to believe in yourself to make that many half-court shots at the end of a quarter, at the end of a game, at the end of a half? You know how much – because that – I don't really believe that there are people out there who are much better than anyone else in the NBA at making that shot. I think that some people believe they're going to make that shot more than the others, and he's one of those people. I do. Curry, whatever. I'm not saying he's Steph Curry, but I do think that there's
Peyton
something
Pritchard
in
to
his
Steph
mind.
Curry. Did you hear that
There
sentence?
is something in his mind. He believes, I get this ball, I'm throwing it up there, and this thing's going in. And he believes that, and it does go in. And he had another one in the game yesterday, and he was he was shooting from all over the place. Now, he doesn't always make them, and sometimes he'll go out there and miss a bunch of shots. That opening game against the Knicks, Peyton Pritchard was like 1 for 10 from 3, and he was the reason why they didn't break the record. Him and Sam Hauser couldn't throw the ball in the ocean at the end of that game when everybody was raining threes, so it's not like this is an every night thing with him. But when he's on, and it seems like that's happening more often these days, the progression there is on the rise in terms of how often he does this type of thing. That's huge for the Celtics.
Well, that's where I was only half joking earlier when I said the Jaylen Brown comments about, games against the Pistons where we'll just let P. Pritch go for 30. I don't know if that's the scenario anymore. Maybe it's now there's just going to be certain games against regardless of competition. Because I know the Bucks aren't necessarily good right now. Mm-hmm. They're still the Bucks. They're still Giannis and the Bucks. They're still, as of a year ago, were considered a favorite in the East with Dame Lillard's arrival and Giannis and that whole thing. I think he's kind of ascending, and that's where I made the comparison to Julian Edelman or Brad Marchand or one of these guys that, yeah, they're fun, but they're just sort of complementary role. And then you're like, yeah, I wonder if he could do that. It's like in the preseason. You go from the third string to the second string, then suddenly you do it against the first string, and then do you do it against really good players? I think he's in that ascension. I do. I think he's in that ascension from nice little player, fun little player to, he's a pretty good player. He can do. He doesn't have to have a bad team to do that, or he doesn't need just more opportunities in a certain game. No, he can do that when you might need it / want it against any team, against any opponent.
Yeah, and that sometimes on teams like this creates a logjam, right? You got 2 guards that you trust and that you want in there starting and who should be playing starting minutes, and then you have this other guy off the bench who's a point guard. He could be a shooting guard, too. He's undersized, but, a shoot-first point guard who can do the things that, not everything that Derek White can do, but offensively can do a lot of the same things, maybe even more so. Good shooter, just like Holiday is. Can play good defense, got like 5 rebounds last night. Like he's a pretty balanced player, all things considered. And when there's log jams like that, that's generally a good thing. That means you have a lot of talent on your team, and those log jams tend to break themselves out. Something happens. One guy becomes disposable, or you end up getting a real big trade offer for somebody or something, and you feel comfortable moving on because you got the other two. So that's
or just an injury or load management
or that. Yeah.
Maybe you just say, you know what, he's worthy of a few more minutes, and it's not going to hurt these other guys to have a few extra minutes with their butts on the bench if we can trust him to do what needs to be done and keep sort of things rolling in the right direction. Yeah, it's definitely a high-class problem, so to speak.
My favorite part of the game last night, my favorite sequence, and you probably saw it on Twitter last night, end of the third quarter, Pritchard gets it, bombs another three as time's running out. And then they cut over to the sideline, and Doc Rivers is just hands on his knees, head in his head between his knees, basically, just like, this guy's killing us. He broke Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers was a broken man last night because of Peyton Pritchard.
And that's where Doc went back to, I circled him. And I don't even know where he's talking about circling him on a whiteboard or whatever. And just because you circle a name, Coach, what does that mean when you circle the name? Does that mean he's going to be the key to the game? Is that the guy we're focusing on? But I think he, in his mind, there it is on Twitch if you're watching right now.
Hilarious.
The broken Doc Rivers and Bucks. Coach, they're really good. If that guy's going to go for like 30, then we're just kind of screwed.
He looks like he's about to throw up.
Yeah, it does.
Probably
look like
wants to.
Look like it's about to come up. He's like,
because there's probably something to that. Like you come in knowing if Tatum has 40 and Brown has 30, and they have one of those 30-30 games. Okay, they're two top 15 players, whatever. But now you tell me I'm going to lose because Peyton Pritchard hits 8 threes and he has 28?
Especially in a game where your two best players are both getting over 30.
Right.
Like, if you went into it and drew up the game and he's like, Lillard gets 30, Giannis gets, we're going to win this game. And Tatum has, 14, 15, we're going to win this game.
Not so fast, my friend.
Yeah, Ocon